Thank you to our Ko-fi supporters for helping us make this video. It's the year 1758, and Alapa'i, the king of the island of Hawaii, is troubled as he watches Halley's Comet streak overhead in the night sky. His kahuna had warned him that a fiery light in the sky would mark the birth of a special child, one who would grow to become a slayer of chiefs and would rule not just his island, but all the surrounding islands as well. Days later, Alapa'i's fears only grow when he learns that his niece has given birth to a boy. Believing that this may be the child of prophecy, Alapa'i sends his men north to find and execute the baby. But word travels quickly, and before they can reach the village, the chiefess entrusts her son to a relative who takes the infant deep into the mountains to be raised alone and in secrecy. The boy survives, and at the age of 5, when he's discovered to still be alive, he's welcomed back to the royal court. Having endured a life in isolation, the boy's name is changed to Kamehameha, the Lonely One, and he's entrusted to his uncle Kalaniʻopuʻu, who's tasked with teaching him the ways of the warrior and keeping a close eye on him as he grows. King Alapa'i dies, and Kalaniʻopuʻu is made the new ruler of Hawaii. His kahuna tells him that Kamehameha seems to be filled with supernatural levels of mana and will one day become a great warrior. Years pass, and the boy masters the Hawaiian martial arts and grows to a towering 7 feet tall. At the age of 14, he lifts the legendary Naha stone, which is said to grant the mana needed to conquer all the islands to the man who can move it. All signs point to Kamehameha actually being the child of prophecy, and many chiefs begin to take notice. Word spreads as far as the distant island of Kauai of a mighty warrior on Hawaii, but the Lonely One is content faithfully serving his uncle. But everything changes when strange ships appear off the coast that will change the course of history on the island forever. It's November 1788, and natives throughout the islands are busy celebrating and giving thanks to their god Lono for the bountiful harvest. This sacred time of the year, known as Makahiki, was filled with feasts, hula, and games to thank the god and to prepare the islands for his long-awaited return. The villagers in Kalaniʻopuʻu's village are enjoying the festivities when suddenly in the distance they spot a strange canoe sailing towards them. They run to shore to get a better look, and they see that on the canoe is a giant cross draped with white cloth that's billowing in the wind. There is no mistake. This canoe matches descriptions that have been passed down through generations. At long last, Lono has finally returned. The strange canoe anchors in Kealakekua Bay, and renowned British explorer Captain James Cook and his men board a small boat and row towards the crowd that's quickly amassing on the beach. As they take their first steps onto shore, the Hawaiians fall to their knees before these strange visitors. Kalaniʻopuʻu welcomes Captain Cook with great humility, and for a month, the king treats them to lavish meals and showers them with gifts worthy of a god. Cook and his men gladly accept the islanders' hospitality, and when they've restocked their supplies, they thank their hosts and set sail to explore the northern Pacific. The Hawaiians rowed their canoes next to the ships, escorting them away from the island, and waved to the explorers as their ships disappeared over the horizon. Their hearts were filled with gratitude that Lono had finally returned to celebrate Makahiki with them. Everything was perfect, until Cook came back. Sailing north, Cook's ships are caught in a storm, and he's forced to return to Hawaii for repairs. They sail back into Kealakekua Bay, and the welcome they receive this time is much different. Makahiki season was over, and the islanders wonder, why is Lono back again? The Hawaiians grow suspicious. Perhaps this man isn't Lono after all. Feeling deceived, they refuse to help Cook repair his ship and begin to aggressively pick fights with his crew. In response, Cook's men begin stealing supplies from the Hawaiians, and the Hawaiians retaliate by stealing a small boat the explorers were using to row to shore. For Cook, this was the last straw. If the natives will not cooperate willingly, then he will force them to. Early in the morning on Valentine's Day 1779, Cook and his men walk into the village and demand that Kalaniʻopuʻu come with them. Groggy and confused, the king rubs his eyes and takes Cook's hand, unaware of what's happening. As they walk back towards the British ship, one of the king's wives cries out for them to stop. Her voice alerts nearby chiefs, who quickly realize something is wrong. Cook and his men begin rushing the king toward their boat, while the chiefs shout for Kalaniʻopuʻu to stop and sit. A kahuna emerges holding a coconut and begins chanting aggressively at Cook. His words echo through the village, and the commotion draws everyone out to the shore. Kamehameha and his fellow warriors rush to join the crowd, weapons in hand, ready to fight. Cook orders his men to line the shore. They draw their rifles and aim into the crowd. A standoff ensues, with the Hawaiians growing angrier and angrier that their king is not being returned. A warrior steps forward and menacingly points his weapon at Cook, and on instinct, the captain draws his pistol and fires. The Hawaiians begin throwing stones at the explorers, and one of the Marines is knocked to the ground. Cook fires another shot into the crowd, this time killing one of the warriors. Enraged, the Hawaiians lunge at the captain, and his men open fire into the mob. Some of their musket balls find their mark, but before they can reload, the Hawaiian warriors have swarmed Cook and have forced him to the ground. As he tries to struggle to his feet, he's stabbed and clubbed to death. Cook's ship opens fire on the crowd, and the cannon fire quickly scatters the Hawaiians. The surviving sailors row back to their ships and leave the island for good. Though the brawl was short, Kamehameha was shaken by the sheer power of these foreign weapons. Cook's men were few, but if an army with these weapons were to return, would their warriors stand a chance? He thinks of the people who live on islands near them. They shared the same history, the same blood, but they have been at war with each other for generations. Divided like this, they will all fall. Someone must unite them so they can stand together as one. Silently, Kamehameha decides that when the time is right, he will be the one to do it. In 1782, King Kalaniʻopuʻu passes away. He leaves his kingdom to his son Kivalao and gives his nephew Kamehameha guardianship of the god of war Ku and control of Waipio Valley. Tensions instantly break out over who's the ruler of the land. The one with the blessing of Ku is the one who actually has the power to conquer all, and this convinces 5 warrior chiefs that Kamehameha is truly the child of prophecy. They pledge their loyalty to him, and to the new king of Hawaii, this is a direct challenge to the throne. His brother Keoua retaliates by cutting down sacred coconut trees in Kamehameha's land and killing some of his men, who he sacrifices to the gods for his brother. This act cannot go unpunished, so Kamehameha assembles his army and marches into Kivalao's land. As Kamehameha's forces march through villages on their way to confront the king, women and children rush to seek shelter in protected sanctuaries, knowing that war on this island spares no one. Kivalao gets word of this invasion, and he takes his army out to meet Kamehameha. The armies cross paths on a rocky field near Kealakekua Bay. The warriors taunt each other as kahuna on both sides begin chanting, calling upon the gods to grant them mana needed to secure victory. Now, blessed by the gods, war cries fill the air, and the armies charge each other. Kamehameha and his chiefs lead their army from the front lines and rush to engage Kivalao's men. Combat is up close and brutal. Shark's tooth daggers tear into the flesh of their enemies, skulls are crushed by heavy clubs, and spears impale warriors caught off guard. In the chaos, Keoua, Kivalao's brother, cuts down many of Kamehameha's men, challenging all who dare face him. In the heat of battle, one of Kamehameha's chiefs, a man named Kameamoku, is struck and falls to the ground. His bright feathered cape broadcasts his nobility for all to see, and it quickly draws the attention of Kivalao. The king marches towards the fallen chief, weapon ready to finish him off. But just as he nears, a stone from one of Kamehameha's slingers slams into Kivalao's head, dropping him to his knees. Kameamoku crawls toward him and slits his throat with a shark-toothed dagger. Kivalao is dead, and his army retreats. Kamehameha removes the blood-stained royal cloak from the former ruler's body and lifts it for all to see, officially claiming his lands. But the deceased king's brother would not give up the island of Hawaii so easily. For the next decade, Kamehameha and Keoua wage a bitter war. Keoua wins many of the battles, and the island remains divided. Kamehameha's chiefs insist he is still the child of prophecy and that they will ultimately win, but doubt creeps in. How can he unite all the islands if he can't even conquer his own? He needs help, a blessing from the gods to tip the scales of this war in his favor. And the gods answer his prayers in the most unexpected way. Cook's discovery of the Sandwich Isles had literally put Hawaii on the map, and by 1790, traders en route across the Pacific had begun making stops to resupply and do business. Hearing news of this land, 2 American trading ships, the Eleonora, commanded by Simon Metcalf, and the Fair American, commanded by his son Thomas Metcalf, set out for the islands. The larger ship, the Eleonora, is the first to arrive and drops anchor in Kauai Bay, an area governed by Kamehameha's loyal chief Kameamoku, the guy who slit the previous king's throat. The chief boards the ship to greet the traders, and though we don't know exactly what he did, it was evidently something that Simon found so offensive that he has the chief tied up and flogs him as punishment. The Eleonora quickly departs Hawaii and sails to the island of Maui, where the locals there steal one of Simon's rowboats and disassemble it for its nails. Furious, the captain invites the villagers to come aboard his ship to trade. The natives load their canoes with food and goods and begin to paddle out towards the Eleonora. As they approach the ship, Simon commands his men to open fire, and cannonballs tear into the unsuspecting villagers, killing 100 of them and injuring 100 more. At the very same time, back on Hawaii Island, Simon's son Thomas, completely unaware of the horrible things his father has been doing, arrives in Kauai Bay aboard the Fair American, ready to trade. Kamehameha, who was still seething from the humiliation of the flogging by Simon Metcalf, boards the Fair American with his men and kills Thomas and nearly the entire crew. The only survivor is a man named Isaac Davis, whose courage in fighting back against the warriors had impressed the chief enough to spare his life. The Hawaiians loot the Fair American and take its cannon, weapons, and supplies and drag Davis back to their village as prisoner. Kamehameha sends word south to Kamehameha about what's happened at Kauai, and at the same time, Simon Metcalf returns to Hawaii and anchors near Kamehameha's village. Fearing retaliation for the attack on the Fair American, Kamehameha orders every one of his people to stop trading and avoid the ship entirely. Simon Metcalf sends a man named John Young to shore to ask about the whereabouts of the Fair American, and fearing he may discover the truth, Kamehameha captures him and holds him prisoner. A day passes, and unaware that Young had been captured, Simon Metcalf begins firing his cannons as a signal for the sailor to return to the ship. As the thunder of cannon fire echoes through the village, Kamehameha grows concerned that he'll soon need to lead his men into battle against these invaders and their terrible weapons. The chief and his warriors stand ready, but no one leaves the ship. By the next morning, Metcalf is done waiting. He assumes Young is off playing with the villagers and decides to strand him on the island as punishment. The Eleonora sets sail for China, never to return, and Simon Metcalf never learns of what happened to his son. Soon after, Kamehameha brings Isaac Davis to Kamehameha's village where he meets John Young. The two foreigners are given a choice. Okay, I think he's saying we should teach him how to use these weapons? What if we don't? Okay, so first thing you want to do is swab the barrel. Gotta make sure there's no embers in there. Davis and Young began training Kamehameha and his men on how to operate their new weapons, and over time, the two foreigners developed a deep respect for the chief. They learned to speak Hawaiian and eventually become his loyal advisors. Now armed with Western weapons and a ship of his own, Kamehameha feels the time has come, and he sets out to challenge the most powerful man in all the islands. While Kamehameha was fighting for control of the island of Hawaii, the great king of Maui, Kahekili, had conquered the island of Oahu and now ruled over almost the entire island chain. He was an imposing figure with half of his body tattooed from head to toe. His conquest of the islands had been brutal, and all who had resisted met gruesome ends. Kahekili established his new seat of power on Oahu and entrusted his homeland of Maui to his son, the prince Kalanikupule. Kamehameha saw this shift in power as his moment to strike. He and 5,000 of his warriors board war canoes and set sail for the island of Maui. Landing in Kahului, they march inland towards Wailuku, where they find Kalanikupule and his army standing ready to meet them. The formalities of war quickly begin as both sides prepare themselves for battle. The kahunas chant their last words, and war cries pierce the air as the two armies barrel towards each other. As the Maui warriors rush forward, Kamehameha's men fire a volley of musket balls that rip into Kalanikupule's front line. The prince watches his men fall and is appalled that Kamehameha has stooped to using foreign weapons against fellow islanders. He urges his men to fight, and they charge to meet the invaders. Blood sprays across the battlefield as the warriors clash with shark-toothed daggers, spears, and clubs. For 2 days, neither side could gain the upper hand. On the third day, Kamehameha summons his newest royal advisors to the battlefield, and they bring out a weapon Kalanikupule's men had never seen before. As the warriors of Maui watched the strange white men take position, a thunderous explosion echoed through the valley. Young and Davis fire the cannon taken from the Fair American directly at Kalanikupule's unsuspecting forces. The cannonball tears through his ranks as the prince stood frozen, horrified by its destructive power. Kamehameha's men follow with a round of musket fire, and more of his warriors fall around him. The cannon continues to pound the warriors of Maui, and the prince, now taking heavy casualties, is forced to pull his men back deeper and deeper into the Iao Valley, with Kamehameha stalking them like a predator chasing wounded prey. The Maui forces are pushed back to Iao Stream, and with no other options, they make their last stand. Young and Davis fire their cannons again and again, and within hours, Kalanikupule's army is completely obliterated. Their ravaged bodies are thrown into the water behind them, and they pile up in numbers so great the river itself slows to a trickle stained red with blood. When the smoke clears, Kamehameha's forces stare out at a massive bodies and name this battle Kepanivai, the damming of the waters. In the chaos, Kalanikupule manages to sneak away and sails back to Oahu to raise another army. Kamehameha boards his canoes ready to follow him. But just as he's about to leave, he receives word that his land in Hawaii is once again under attack from Keaua. Kamehameha realizes before he can conquer Oahu, he must stomp out this uprising in his home once and for all. He and his warriors voyage back to Hawaii and they quickly clash with Keaua's forces. But once again, Kamehameha is unable to secure a decisive victory, and the rebels retreat through the Kau Desert that skirts the Kilauea volcano. As the exhausted army trudges through the wasteland, a deep rumbling from beneath their feet grows louder and louder. Suddenly, the earth splits open and lava erupts all around them. The air is filled with poisonous gases, and many of Keoa's men collapse, gasping for air. Others try to continue onward, casting footprints in the molten lava that had surrounded them. Nearly his entire army was wiped out by the eruption, and now it seemed that even Pele, the goddess of fire, had chosen Kamehameha as the true ruler of the island. The following year, Kamehameha offers a peace treaty to the defeated prince. Keaua knows his cousin was not someone who would offer such a thing, but resigned to defeat, he accepts the invitation, and just as he expected, upon arrival, he and his men are executed on the spot. I knew it. Kamehameha is now king of Hawaii Island, and Kahekili recognizes him as a serious threat. Both kings begin preparations for the inevitable clash. They trade for stockpiles of Western weapons and forge alliances with foreign powers to support them in the coming war. But before Kahekili is able to attack Hawaii, he dies, and his empire is split between his two sons, Kalanikupule and Kaeokulani. Both brothers believe they deserve the entire empire, and they go to war with each other for full control of their father's lands. Their armies suffer heavy losses, and in the end, Kaeokulani is killed in battle. Kalanikupule becomes the sole successor to the great Kahekili, but he is severely weakened. Kamehameha knows that this was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He'd already defeated Kalanikupule once at Kapanivai. The time to unite the islands is now. So, in 1795, Kamehameha sets sail with 10,000 warriors, and they arrive on the shores of Oahu near Waikiki. Large, powerful tattooed men wearing loincloths push modern cannons to shore. Chiefs adorned with feather capes inspect their muskets, preparing for battle. To a time traveler, the army is one that seems lost in time. They spend a few days gathering supplies in Waikiki and then head west in search for Kalanikupule. They soon find his army, dug in at a defensive position near the mountain Puawaina, the hill of human sacrifice, known today as Punchbowl Crater. Over the past 5 years, Kamehameha hasn't just adopted Western weapons into his army, he had absorbed Western military strategy as well. He sends half of his men to flank Kalanikupule while he creates a diversion and engages them in a frontal assault. But before he can issue his commands, explosions ring out in the distance and cannonballs crash down near Kamehameha's forces. He looks up and spots a familiar face. Once a trusted ally, the chief Kaiana had defected and was now fighting for the enemy. Kamehameha gives the signal, and Davis and Young answer back with a thunderous cannon barrage of their own. His warriors charge forward towards Kaiana's position. The battlefield becomes a blend of old and new. Kamehameha's warriors push their spears forward in a European pike formation, while cannons and muskets ring out behind them. Other fighters break free to engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat with ancient weapons. Kaiana and Kalanikupule are pushed back to a secondary defensive position where more cannons are waiting. As Kamehameha's men charge, they're hit with heavy fire and take serious casualties. The defenders celebrate the small victory. Though they're outnumbered, Kaiana thinks they may be able to pull off the upset. But suddenly, war cries break out behind him. Kamehameha's flanking army had finally arrived. They hit the defenders hard, and the Oahu cannons are caught completely off guard. Kaiana turns to fight off the attackers, and in the chaos, Davis takes aim and sends a cannonball directly at the traitor chief, blowing a hole through his chest. Kalanikupule is also injured and flees the battlefield. His army falls into disarray and they begin to run. Kamehameha's men show no mercy chasing the fleeing warriors through Nu'uanu Valley all the way to a cliff. With nowhere to run, the last of Kalanikupule's army are pushed closer and closer to the edge. Realizing that all hope is lost, many begin jumping off the cliff in a desperate attempt to escape. A few try to fight back, only to find themselves pushed off by force. When the last of the Oahu warriors had fallen, Kamehameha's men looked down below and named the battle Kalele Ka'anae, the leaping mullet, after the men who voluntarily leapt to their end. A century later, during the construction of the Pali Highway, 800 skulls of those warriors were discovered at the base of this cliff. Kalanikupule goes into hiding but is eventually found and sacrificed to the gods by Kamehameha, officially ending the kingdom of Maui. Now only the island of Kauai remained free of his rule. For the next 15 years, Kamehameha attempted to invade and conquer the island, but is repeatedly stopped by the forces of nature. First, a storm sinks his canoes and forces him to turn back. On his second attempt, an outbreak of cholera wipes out a large part of his army before they could even set sail. In 1810, as he prepared for his third invasion attempt, the king of Kauai, Kamuali'i, realizes that war would only lead to more bloodshed and offers his island as a vassal state to the king. Under the guidance of his kahuna, the Lonely One accepted this offer and made peace with Kauai. His chiefs, on the other hand, hated this idea and decided in secret that they should still kill the guy just in case. Isaac Davis personally found this betrayal revolting and goes to warn the king of Kauai, who decides to skip the celebratory feast and immediately sails back home, leaving the chiefs with all that poison but no one to use it on. Okay, Davis, since our royal guest from Kauai didn't show up, I guess you can be the lucky one to eat his specially prepared royal food instead. What makes it special? Oh, you'll see. Drink up! Davis mysteriously died of poisoning that night, but after nearly 30 years of war, Kamehameha had finally fulfilled the prophecy of his childhood. After centuries of war, peace had finally come to the islands, and for the first time, they were united as one. He names his new kingdom the Kingdom of Hawaii after his home island, and in just a few decades, his descendants, the Royal House of Kamehameha, transformed the humble kingdom into a modern world power recognized as equals by the great kings and queens of the world. Though the Hawaiian monarchy was ultimately illegally overthrown and annexed by the United States in 1893, the legacy of Kamehameha the Great lives on, and he's still celebrated throughout the islands and by native Hawaiians throughout the world to this day. Oh, and some guy in Japan named a special move after him in the manga he was writing.